like to call to order the meeting of the Maricopa County Community College District Governing Board for May 1st, 2018. We'll begin with a pledge of allegiance. Fabiola Villegas.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Villegas. Substitutions. We have Judy Sanchez for Christina Schultz, Tony Asti for Stephen Gonzalez, Eric Lashinsky for Terry Labor-Reese, and Jeff Darbert for Sasan Paridazadi. Student life reports. South Mountain Community College.
Good evening, President Mr. Hendricks, members of the board, Dr. Maria Harper-Marinick, members of the CEC, and guests. My name is Fabiola Villegas. I am Chair of Student Governance. My major is elementary education. I will be graduating in 2 weeks, transferring to NAU in the fall of 2018.
My name is Ellie Rios. I'm co-chair for Student Governance. I will be transferring to Arizona State University in fall of 2018, and I will be getting my associates in arts from South Mountain Community College in fall of 2018 as well, pursuing a degree in economics with a hint of political science.
Hello, my name is Rosie Barrios. I am treasurer in student governance. I am majoring in human and family development. I will be transferring to ASU next spring and graduating this December.
Hello, my name is Maria Dominguez. I'm a co-secretary of student governance, majoring in business marketing. Graduating spring 2019, and I'll be transferring to ASU.
Good evening, my name is Adrian Trujillo. I'm currently a secretary for student governance at South Mountain Community College. I apologize. I'm pursuing my major in hospitality and a bachelor's in hotel and restaurant management, and I'll be transferring to NAU. I'll be graduating in spring 2019. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Indo Octavianus Bolu. I'm a freshman at South Mountain Community College. I'll be graduating this semester. I will be majoring in global health, hopefully going on to a pre-med career with an emphasis on rural medicine.
So the Student Governance Board strives to promote and provide programs, services, and events for students and staff at South Mountain Community College. A couple of our goals is to involve students in the overall planning of student life and leadership programs, and to provide educational program opportunities throughout the year. Here are a couple clubs that we have on campus that strive to provide events and activities for students throughout the semester. One of our values is collaboration. So as you can see, here are a couple pictures where we collaborated with other clubs on campus. On the bottom left, we collaborated with the Women's Rising to bring Jerry Williams, who's the first female chief of police of the Phoenix Police Department, to talk about her failures and how her failures actually brought her to where she is right now. On the bottom right, we collaborated with the Male Empowerment Network. We were able to bring Sheriff Paul Pinzone. He talked about integrity and how that played a big role on what his job description is now. We do have a lot of leadership training throughout the year. For example, we have leadership where we take a couple students to a retreat. They do things like team building and a lot of networking. We were able to attend a one-day retreat that was led with other Maricopa Community College students. We learned things like how to talk to administration without getting in trouble and Leadership 101. But our main leadership training is summer training. That is when we learn how to run meetings, take minutes, and do a lot of event plannings, which is mostly what we do with student life and leadership. We're also part of different councils. We have the Learning Council, the Student Development Council, Shared Governance, and OENT, which is Organizational Effectiveness and Technology. I'm personally involved in the Shared Governance Council, and I was able to be in the Vice President of Learning Committee and voice the students' opinion on who we wanted the Vice President of Learning to be at South Mountain Community College. Here are a couple of events that we had on campus throughout the year. On the top right, you can see that we had a club day. We had a couple clubs just giving information of the activities that were going to be held throughout the year and if they wanted to join as well. On the bottom right, student governance was able to have a luncheon with our facility department. And through that luncheon, we just wanted to give them an appreciation of what they do for the campus and because they're to keep it beautiful.
At South Mountain Community College, we have thematic months. So this is an ability for students to go ahead and express their cultures and share their cultures within South Mountain Community College. So we have Black History Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, Native American History Month, LGBTQ Month, and Lunar New Year. For volunteerism at South Mountain Community College, we offer a variety. Our main two are St. Mary's Food Bank and Gabriel's Food Pantry. For St. Mary's Food Bank, we distribute food to the community. So we go ahead and have a truck come by with St. Mary's, and they usually have vegetables, fruits, non-perishable items such as breads or even chips. And for these community members, we serve over 1,000 households. Within the households, there are 5,680 individuals, and for the volunteers, these include our staff, faculty, and our students. There are 364, and for the pounds of food that we have distributed out to the community, there are over 100,000 pounds. And for Gabriel's Food Pantry, that is open from Monday to Friday from 11 to 2, and we go ahead and give one food item to the student body. Whoever comes, we give them one food item. And that's a total of 11,000 food items that we've served within this school year, which is a difference from last school year, about 5,000 plus. And this has shown us an increase of food scarcity within South Mountain Community College, and it has impacted me and myself personally because I have to serve my classmates and my fellow friends as well. So for civic engagement, we go ahead and collaborated with Phoenix Children's Museum, and we helped out with MLK Day, where we went ahead and went down to their basement and dusted all out and transported their equipment out from the basement to another site. And then for Make a Difference Day, we went ahead and replanted cactuses to help beautify the site. So from South Mountain Community College graduates, we would like to thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Excellent. We have a civics project presentation by Deborah Nolan.
Do I hit that? Do we advance our PowerPoint, or will it come up?
It's coming. I found it.
How do you make it show up? Okay. My name is Deborah Nolan. President Hendricks, members of the board, Dr. Harper Marinick. My name is Deborah Nolan, and I'm here with Ryan Grenrock, former student, and now our current chairman of the board for Don'tLeaveMe.org. I teach healthcare and biomedical ethics, and as part of my course, my students orient towards serving the greater good. They want to be nurses or doctors, firefighters, first responders, and even veterinarians take my course. It's cross-listed as a humanities. And I believe that if you're going to serve the greater good, you must understand you are the greater good. And to do this, I incorporate civic engagement into my course. It's pretty big. I have students here tonight who can testify to that. I believe civic engagement means working to make a difference in the civic life of our communities and developing the combinations of knowledge, skills, values, and motivation to make that difference. It means promoting the equality of life in a community through both political and non-political processes. And I try to incorporate these processes into my course. So in order to do that, in 2015, I kind of ran out of things to do. So I started a civics project called Don'tLeaveMe.org. It was voluntary. Ryan was a member of that class that year. I said, let's write a public service announcement. Let's make it 30 seconds, and let's talk about not leaving a dog in a hot car. We'll interface with the community, and we'll shop it to K-Jazz radio, and maybe they'll play it. That never happened. Instead, we went to live events. We expanded our social media brand. We met with state and federal legislators. We initiate and lobby and support legislation, and we also now have to do service learning. So this is an integral part of my course. It's hands-on and it's applied. A year later, we decided, with the help of my students, we had 6 hostages. One of them stayed and now sits on our board because we formed a 501 nonprofit. And we also decided to do something called Take the Pledge. So we have an annual hot car awareness campaign, which Dana Sarr, thank you for sitting as one of our inaugural people. Ryan and I also had the opportunity to meet the governor of Arizona. And he kind of stiffened up because it was the same week that he took all the money away from Maricopa Community Colleges. And when he saw my ID badge, he wasn't sure what he wanted to do with us. But he agreed to talk to us at the end of the event. His whole body language changed when we found out we just wanted him to take the pledge. So Take the Pledge fosters this idea that we, through these campaign ads, help people understand that you shouldn't leave a dog in a hot car. We also go to Pet Expo, which is a big, giant event, 20 or 30,000 people show up. And we've managed to fortify this in an even bigger way. These are our board members. Donna Winston, who works for Maricopa Community College, sits on our board. Ryan Grenrock, who's standing beside me. Samantha Gutierrez is a current student. Because I took this from CGCC, I took it to Glendale Community College as well. So Samantha was from Glendale Community College. She's still there. She graduates in 2022. And Chelsea was a student at CGCC on our second year, who is now at Arizona State University. She's migrating towards being a veterinarian instead of a nurse. So that's my board. And then now where we are is 2017, we're 2 years old, and we decided to initiate a hot car bill, which Ryan is going to talk about.
I'm going to speak to you a little bit about the student experience on a project like this. Like Deborah had mentioned, our initial pose of pitching this to K-Jazz never happened. Within the first month, we were sitting in an office with Sheriff Arpaio talking about politics and ideas on how to market this campaign. So it blew up much quicker than we initially anticipated. Getting the experience to work on this, it started out with forming an idea, taking that and discussing that with handfuls of leaders in the community, interfacing and working on the language. How are we going to write a bill that's safe to the agricultural and the farm community, but is also going to protect our children and our pets. Getting to see that go through the state legislature. We worked with Senator Kavanaugh. In this image, Senator Burgess asked me to speak in front of a House committee, and seeing each of those steps go through kind of opened my eyes and my teammates' eyes to how our whole system works.
Can I interrupt you just 1 second? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Miss Livingston is on the phone and she's not getting connected. If somebody could take care of that and get her connected into the meeting.
Lauren, can you hear me?
Okay, there. I guess we're good now.
Yeah, we're good now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Good luck, Deborah.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No,
Please
no,
continue.
no worries.
She took the flag.
So yes, we've gotten a chance to meet a lot of leaders, and I think that's something we saw in the first presentation. I think they left. A lot of students get the opportunity to go volunteer and work and be part of something. This really kind of takes that a step further and allows someone like me to interface with everyone sitting in front of me now as a leader and have the opportunity to be to learn, mentored, and learn how to further our community when it takes the time for us to kind of follow in your footsteps and take the reins. So something like this has been a great deal to me, and to see this hot car bill actually go into state law is something that I think we can both be proud of, to say that we were part of that team that pushed that through together.
So I'm going to finish off by saying right now our Take the Pledge is going to have its 3rd year. We launched at the end of this month. We work now with the Secretary of State. We've obviously worked with the Mayor of Phoenix, the Mayor of Tucson, our own board member who's on the phone, federal legislators. And this year we're reaching out to business leaders. Our first business leader to take the pledge was the president and CEO of the Diamondbacks. Nicole Bidwell is sitting for her photo soon. This year we've also done something different to expand our brand and our civic message. We're going to orient our message about dog ownership, pet ownership. We're going to use that as a catalyst for teaching civic engagement to K through 12 students in 2019. So we have a legislative blog dog. She's on the picture there, and Vaya will talk about law on our Facebook page, and it's from the legislative blog dog. We also have our blog dog of the day who talks about the weather and introduces our campaigns for us. This semester, I'm pretty proud of the students that I currently have, and I'm going to end this really quickly. This semester, our bill that we're going to introduce next year is an animal abuser registry. And we've learned this year that the human-animal bond is very relevant to health care and how we can use animals in patient care. We also learned that the animal abuse rate is really crazy in Arizona. So instead of dropping a bill, which has not succeeded for 10 sessions, we are doing a survey, which is in your packet. You're welcome to take the survey. And we're canvassing the state of Arizona. It's now an honors project. So one of my current students, it's her honors project. She's going to stay on because we've been invited to present this at a civics conference next year. So my students also followed a bill that the school wasn't sure they wanted to be a part of, but it was legislation relative to carrying non-lethal weapons on schools. My students wrote a letter. They testified in front of the committee. And then I personally was invited to testify for civic engagement bill sponsored by Senator Yee, and also another bill sponsored by Senator Kavanaugh about misrepresenting service animals as not service animals. I take those experiences back to my classroom and further bolster the idea that we should be civically engaged, and we do it in an applied sense. So I'd like to say thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our civics engagement in my class, and we ask you to like us on Facebook, and if you're interested in taking the survey, we welcome you. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, we're willing to take a couple.
I do.
You do?
Ms.
Okay.
Livingston.
This person from the phone needs to schedule a sitting as soon as her husband gets out of session.
Well, we are all for the Representative Livingston to take the pledge. Mrs. Livingston's dog was our latest blog dog, and she's very photogenic, so we use her dog a lot, actually. But thank you. We're going to call you.
Okay.
And we also invite everybody to take the pledge we do a photograph, we come and do it, I bring students so they can meet you and get their ideas, and then we create the ad, and then you go on our social media. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to mix up the agenda a little bit. I'm going to proceed to citizens interim. We have a few people that want to speak tonight. Before I call on them, I will read a standard preface to citizens interim. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the governing board. In compliance with the open meeting law, the governing board will neither discuss nor take action on issues raised during this portion of the agenda. When necessary, issues will be taken under advisement and placed on a subsequent agenda. Presenting concerns to the board and the free expression of ideas should be communicated with decorum and respect. Uncivil or disorderly conduct is not permitted. The use of derisive or insulting language or the direction of remarks that defame, attack, or harass an individual may serve as cause for the board's president to direct the speaker immediately conclude his or her remarks. Eventually, I'll have read that enough times that I'll be able to get through it without messing it up. Our first person that's requested to speak is Miss Christine Kersel. If you'll please approach the microphone.
Good evening. Oops. President Hendricks and members of the board and the Maricopa County College System, thank you for having us tonight. I'd like to address an incident that happened on Thursday, April 12th, in a world religion class at Mesa Community College. A professor played a blasphemous video as one student described it, and I quote, "It showed Jesus fantasizing about a sexual relationship with Mary Magdalene. She was naked, above him, and soaked." End quote. As I started inquiring about how a professor could be permitted to show such a video, I came to know something called academic freedom. Most describe academic freedom as a scholar's freedom to express ideas without risk of official interference or professional disadvantage. Basically, a professor can teach whatever they want and not be held accountable. This is intellectual dishonesty. What world religion teaches what that video portrayed? I think the board needs to set some boundaries so that this doesn't happen again in our taxpayer-funded schools. What value did this video have in a world religions class? Was there a public notice given to students of this graphic scene? A scene that is offensive to Christianity. Why was this not listed in a syllabus for the class, so the students would have the freedom to choose this class to take it or to not take it if it wasn't one of their requirements? There are many of us families in the community college system. My son will soon be there. When we spoke about this at home, he said that he would seriously consider other options because, in his words, he couldn't trust the community college system to teach the truth. I am a Christian, and if you're going to allow this type of intellectual dishonesty to be taught in your institution without notice to students, my family will not step foot at the doorstep of the community colleges here. I look forward to hearing from each and every one of you, board members and administration, as how boundaries can be set on your professors. If some type of boundary is not set, I will make it my mission to tell every single Christian in Maricopa County what your community college system is all about. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kersel. Our second speaker, Ms. Susan Hicks.
I'm Susan Hicks. Good evening, board and President Hendricks. I'm here in agreement with Christine to say that a video such as this has nothing to do with academic studies or learning. And in fact, this had to do with a personal agenda, to a pornographic agenda, in fact, to defame and just slam Christianity. And I don't think it has any place in the classroom, and I don't think it has any business being allowed as a curriculum study, to be part of a curriculum study on world religions. It has no bearing and no academic value to the video. And so I'm here to also say stuff like this should not be allowed in the classroom. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will return to our agenda. The Rose Garden Award and Arboretum presentation, Jared Langkilty.
Good evening, President Hendricks, members of the board, and CEC. My name is Jared Langkilty. I'm the Executive Director of Development and Community Relations at Mesa Community College. It's a pleasure to be before you this evening. Did you know that the rose is a symbol of 4 universal values: love, friendship, beauty, and peace? The Rose Garden at Mesa Community College began growing roots in 1997, 21 years ago, in partnership with the oldest and largest rose society in the state of Arizona, the Mesa East Valley Rose Society. The garden has grown to nearly 10,000 rose bushes and consists of over 1,000 varieties. All these rose bushes are donated and they're endowed with a fund housed with the Maricopa Community College's foundation. The garden is maintained with nearly 800 volunteers a year and students. Its academic uses range from algebra and biology to GPS and GIS technology to maintain the collections, as well as poetry, photography, and watercolor painting, and many other disciplines. Estimates suggest that there's over 50,000 visitors a year, and the Rose Garden is ranked as one of the top 10 things to see and do in Mesa by TripAdvisor. The garden is a living laboratory and tests new roses from growers around the world. And these roses are not yet available on the open market as they're evaluated over a 2-year period. And now, for the real exciting news, it's an honor and pleasure to introduce you to a founding Rose Garden board member, Mary Lou Kaufman. She's also the curator of the roses for the garden. She will then be followed by Sean Whipcomb, a faculty member at Mesa Community College teaching biology, who will share a significant campus achievement that was made possible because of the infrastructure in place by the Rose Garden. And I will just point out before I depart that you have a thermos near you with the Rose Garden on it, and it's a token of our appreciation for your public service. Mary Lou?
Well, as a result of the Rose Garden being so big and known worldwide, we've been evaluated by international Rose Garden judges over a period of time. And as a result of that, we have been named by the World Federation of Rose Societies to be a part of the International Test Gardens. And we partner with gardens in China, Japan, New Zealand, Australia, and California. We take roses, we evaluate roses from all the growers in the United States, and now we will start accepting roses from growers and hybridizers throughout the world. And this is really a very great honor for our garden and for the college and the surrounding communities. And as a result of our international status now, we have been nominated by the World Federation of Rose Societies to become be awarded the Garden I'll get this in a minute, the Garden of Excellence by the societies. And this is a very prestigious award. It elevates our garden to world-class status, and the award will be presented by the World Federation of Rose Societies Convention in Copenhagen, Denmark in June. And this is a very big deal. And we are very proud. Thank you.
And my name is Sean Whitcomb again, and I'm residential faculty in biology at MCC.
Please.
I'm not sure. Okay. So thank you for letting us come out and talk, because another significant achievement at MCC, as Jared mentioned, is that we have now achieved what's called accredited Arboretum status, and that grew out of working with the Rose Garden and thinking about how can we expand the Rose Garden idea to the entire campus, because the campus is also home to many beautiful trees and other plants aside from roses. So what is the MCC Arboretum? First of all, an arboretum is a botanical garden that's devoted to specimen plantings of trees, shrubs, and other woody plants like cacti and succulents. And the MCC Arboretum actually encompasses the entire Southern and Dobson campus, about 140 acres, and all of the trees and other plants that are on it. Now that we have become accredited, we are one of only 4 community colleges in the United States to actually have accredited Arboretum status. So we partnered with an organization called ArbNet, which is the international organization that accredits Arboretum around the world. And here there are several benefits to being accredited with ArbNet, including we are now recognized for meeting certain professional standards. We have a certain number of species. We have a plan in place for how to maintain the plants in the long run, and a dedicated staff to work on the Arboretum and those kinds of things. Also, we have been added to a searchable database of arboreta around the world. So when people come to the valley and they're looking for, say, a botanical garden to visit, which is of course a big draw, we're now on this official list of arboreta, and they can come and visit the campus and see the trees on our campus. We will also be able to collaborate more with other ArbNet members from around the world on research projects, getting plants from other areas, and so on. Also, really importantly, we now have access to funding that's only available to accredited public gardens, and that will be significant in the coming years. So this took a lot of work to get to the point where we could become accredited as an arboretum. It started off with a plant inventory in the summer of 2015, sort of an informal inventory where a few people went around and took records of all of the plants on campus and identified all the species. And then a formal inventory was made in summer of 2017, where you can see this student here, Michael Nieveris in the biology department, going around and actually mapping the locations of all the trees and identifying the species of all of them. And then we have just now completed labeling all of the trees. So you know when you go to like the Desert Botanical Garden and you see a label on all of the plants, we now have that for all of the trees on the MCC campus. So anyone who visits the campus sees a big beautiful tree and wants to know what it is, they can just go right up to it and look on the tag on the tree. This was a significant collaboration between several departments. There was the life science department and the horticulture program significantly. And it wasn't just faculty. There were students involved in it and staff from maintenance and operations all along the way. So if you're curious about what kind of trees we have on the MCC of Sutherland Dobson campus, there at last count were 1,241 individual trees, and they belong to 97 different species, and they fit into 24 different plant families. And there's a nice picture of some of the trees in bloom and in the rose garden area. We also created a map of all of the trees that's accessible to anyone with a smartphone while they're on campus, and you can just visit that site, bit.ly/mcctrees, and from there you can, if you're looking for a certain species of tree, you can search for it by its common name, scientific name, accession number, which is a unique identifying number for each of the trees. Then if you can zoom in, and if you're looking at a particular tree and you want to learn more about it, you click on the green dot for that tree, and you will get more details about that particular tree. You get the common name, the scientific name, where it's originally from, and a little thumbnail image so you can confirm that that's the tree you're looking at. So this obviously has a lot of benefits for classes, for research, for student projects. So to give you an idea of the kind of research that we're now doing now that we've identified all the trees, we are going out with our students every semester and having our students collect data on the trees, measuring their heights, measuring the diameter of their trunks and so on, and then they're analyzing the data to come up with a report on the benefits that the trees provide to the campus and the community. So benefits like increasing the property value of the campus, storing carbon from the atmosphere, filtering out air pollutants, and really importantly here, with bigger shade trees shading out the building so that we have lower AC use in the heat of the summer. So thank you for allowing us to come and talk about the MCC Arboretum.
Thank you. Emeritus Awards. We have one Emeritus Distinction Award this evening. The award was approved at the March 27th board meeting, but the employee was unavailable to receive it at that time. We'd like to recognize her tonight. Tony Asti, would you like to approach the podium and introduce your honoree?
Yes, President Hendricks. President Hendricks, members of the board, Chancellor Harper-Marinick, CEC, and guests. It is my honor to introduce Dr. Tony Rodriguez, who served Gateway for 31 years, primarily in the area of respiratory care. Her distinguished service is marked by leadership roles at the college, in the community, nationally, and internationally. Tony represented the Maricopa Community Colleges as coordinator of the CPR training program for over 17 years as part of the American Heart Association. In 2008, she was designated Gateway's Woman of the Year. Her vision as clinical coordinator and program director has facilitated expansions of programs including pulmonary rehabilitation in the HUD Clinic, community education to clinical partners, respiratory care student conferences on campus, and the COPD specialist course in a partnership with the American Lung Association. Tony's dedication to her students, colleagues, profession, and her selfless service to the community and humanity in general, which has been focused on service to the homeless, makes her deserving of this Emeritus Award. Thank you very much. Tony?
I would just first of all like to thank the board. I'd like to thank the chancellor. I'd like to thank Dr. Gonzalez, as well as Tony Asti, as well as my faculty members, Sandra Hensky and Kathy Patterson, who nominated me. I'd also like to thank my family members who are here today, my sister Dolores, my daughter Naomi Love Hill, as well as my nieces. You know, I'm not going to talk long, but I would just like to say that time is something that happens while you're living your life. And I started out 32 years ago with Maricopa. When I started out, there was no computers. I used to use a mimeograph machine. When I started out, I was chair of the TUG committee, which is the Technology Users Group. And we were the first to bring a speaker on the internet. And at that time, the internet belonged to the government. I have worked with some of the most fantastic faculty members who have contributed so much to the profession of respiratory care. I've had the opportunity to travel all over the United States and the world as president of the American Association of Respiratory Care, representing my profession and helping it to grow. You know, when I think about my career, I would sum it up this way. The bottom line is it's not been about the work, but it's been about the positive outcomes that have resulted from the work. It's not been about the processes, but it's been about the people that I've had the opportunity to interact with over these 32 years. And it's not been about the acclaim, but it's been about the service, being of use to so many people. I think about the number of students whose lives I've had the blessing to be able to impact. And I consider it nothing but a blessing to have worked for 32 years for Maricopa. Thank you so much.
Mrs. Haber.
I'd like to speak for everyone and thank Dr. Rodriguez. You've lived an incredible life of sacrifice, of making a difference, and I think something that we all hope to aspire to in some way. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the Chancellor's report. Chancellor Harper-Marinick.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks, members of the board. I have quite a few presentations today, so I ask for your patience. And I will start with a recognition of honor students awards that were given at the American Association of Community Colleges conference when our students displayed very impressive accomplishments. And I have asked Dwayne Oakes from Mesa Community College to share with you the importance of the awards and what happened in Dallas. Dwayne, please.
All right. Good evening, President Hendricks, members of the board, Dr. Harper-Marinick, members of the CEC and guests. My name is Dwayne Oakes, and I have the privilege of serving as the faculty director of the Center for Community and Civic Engagement at Mesa Community College. And for 28 years, I've celebrated students and celebrated student success, and one of the most important ones that I think we do is the All-USA, All-Arizona academic team. Yesterday, we had the privilege of witnessing and participating and celebrating some of our students. But I want to kind of put it in perspective, because each year, every college in the United States has the privilege of nominating 2 students, every campus. And we represent millions and millions of students throughout the system. Yesterday, we had a number of students that were recognized as what's first is referred to as the New Century Scholarship, and then also the second one is the All-USA. And so I'm just going to kind of showcase and share a few of those. The first student is Jonathan Speakman, who at this point is actually in class. He couldn't be here where he should be. And he was named the New Century Scholar. So that's the #1 student that is representing every state. These students get about a $2,500 scholarship, along with a bunch of other ones that we'll kind of share with you. But I think what's really, really important is to recognize that out of 20 students in the United States, out of all the community colleges in the country, we had 3 students from Maricopa. And so I wanted to share and introduce them. The first one I want to introduce, who is here, if you can stand up, this is Michael Guzman from Paradise Valley Community College. Second was Jacob Riddle from our campus, Mesa Community College. And then Jonathan Speakman was also recognized as one of the All-USA scholars. So out of Maricopa Community Colleges, we had 3 students out of all the community colleges. Each of those students brought home some pretty neat awards, though. He has a beautiful award that I'm sure is sitting on his mantle at home, right, Daniel? And also looking at Michael, excuse me. And also each of them got a $5,000 check. And also because they were nominated in the All-Arizona academic team, they also have free tuition to go to either ASU, U of A, or NAU, and many other schools. So I think the challenge for this is to each of us look at the celebration of our students as we enter this time of year. We're celebrating through graduation and award recognitions. There is not an award or recognition program that is more important than the All-USA, in my opinion. Every campus has a chance to nominate 2 students, and just by being nominated, they get free tuition to go to ASU, U of A, or NAU. Then they are recognized as All-Arizona first team. If they're first team, they got $1,000. If they're second team, they got $750. If they're third team, they got $500. And they can go on. Many of these students were also recognized through Phi Theta Kappa. The National Honor Society is the one that helps organize this. Jonathan was also named a Guy White Scholar. That's another $5,000. Tomorrow night, we'll recognize another one of our students that was named a Heights Scholar, and that's another $7,500 on top of that. And so as faculty in the room, community partners, every organization, all the faculty and staff and administrators, mentor a student, help them succeed, and help them celebrate their excellence through scholarship and leadership. Thank you.
I want to thank Dwayne Oakes because he is one of the people that is instrumental in making sure the students are recognized in that manner. But I want to repeat what he said. Of millions of community college students, only 20 were selected. And of the 20 nationwide, 3 were from the Maricopa colleges. So one of the officers from PTK said they were a bit apologetic. I think it's the first time that they have students on stage among the 20 that are from the same institution. So thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, Michael Guzman, also for all that you have done as a student. This is about the 4th time, I think, that you come to the board meeting to be recognized. And I know that you're on your way to completion, so we appreciate you and all the students that you represent here tonight. And thank you for the time, board members. My next, thank you, Dwayne. I know you have to go away, and I know you have to go home too, so thank you, Michael. The next presentation, we have 2 updates on the transformation project. And the first is going to be on the what we were calling meta majors before, and now is the fields of interest, and then the industry partnerships. So I will ask Maria Reyes, Yvette Espinosa, and Matt Jolly to do that one first. Thank you.
Thank you, President Hendricks, board members of the board, Chancellor Harper-Marinick, members of CEC, and guests. I'm Maria Reyes, the Vice President of Transformation for Industry Partnerships, and I'd like to introduce the faculty co-leads and the wonderful, amazing leaders that have worked on the fields of interest, as she mentioned, what we used to call meta majors, project team, Matt Jolly and Yvette Espinosa.
Thank you, Maria. I'm glad that she went first because she took care of the address of the board. I thought I was going to get all of that wrong, the president, chancellor, and the rest of it, but now that's done. Hello. I'm Matt Jolly. I'm an English faculty member at Gateway Community College. I'm also the faculty senate president there. Yvette.
Good evening. I'm Yvette Espinosa. I'm biology faculty at South Mountain Community College.
And we're here to talk about fields of interest which provide for students focused exploration. They create communities and they save students time and money. This is a framework for guided pathways. And it's one of a few frameworks out there. This is, the framework goes clarify the path, help students get on the path, help students stay on the path, and ensure that students are learning. You see that meta majors are sort of the cornerstone of that Pathways project. We're calling them now fields of interest.
So we worked all this semester with our team, and we've made significant progress towards identifying what those meta majors are. This is a description of meta majors that comes from our team and that was vetted throughout various employee groups. What we'd like to draw your attention to is the bottom 3 bullets there. So really, all the work that we did was student focused. And so as part of that, meta majors or fields of interest, right, need to help students identify a program. They need to help students build communities, right, with themselves, with faculty, within the community itself, right? And then we also want to ensure that the fields of interest or meta majors are reducing the unintentional excess credits that sometimes students accumulate.
So the team began by brainstorming the characteristics of fields of interest. I'll let you read all of the smaller bullet points, but the most important, the larger bullet points that fields of interest, the programs, the degrees within a field of interest share related coursework, that they share related student experiences like advising or orientation, that there be connections to industry shared among those different degrees, certificate programs, that there be a language or logic that makes sense to students. That was very important to us as we went about identifying the fields, naming the fields, and populating them. And also that they might share related requirements like drug screenings or background checks or fingerprinting.
So our team is actually being recognized by the consultant as a national model because we made significant progress in a short amount of time. And so one of the very first things we did that I'm probably way too excited about is we changed the name, right? So these have to be student-facing. Meta majors is not student-facing. So what we did was we actually surveyed our students and we determined which language is student-facing. And so that's why we landed on fields of interest. So we surveyed our students in multiple ways. This is one example of that. And you can see that there was a clear majority for fields of interest. So with great excitement, right, we can rename meta majors to fields of interest. And so we're moving forward with that.
And so once the fields were named, then they had to be, once the meta major's name was decided upon, then we needed to decide upon the categories, and we needed to populate those categories with degrees and programs. And we wanted to be at least as collaborative in that process as we had been in naming meta majors to begin with. So the team drafted a set of 7. It was 7 categories in the beginning, and we went on a little bit of a road show. We visited with DAC, the Director of Academic Advising Council, with the Career Council, with CEC. We had feedback sessions with 51 of the ICs, 130 faculty representatives over a course of a couple of weeks in order to get their feedback on our categorization. and the degrees and certificates that we'd populated within those categories. And then just this very afternoon, not more than 5 hours ago, we finalized those categories. And they, right, wait, what happened?
Review. They're coming.
Yep, okay, they're coming. All
So
right.
we're about to show you that. But before we do, we
I'm
want to
excited.
show you the small amount of work that remains. So we didn't name these out on the onset intentionally. We didn't want the names to drive the categories. We wanted those characteristics that we identified to drive the categories. And so there's a small amount of work. We have to figure out what is the student-facing name for each one of these categories. So these are the fields of interest. And you'll notice that they're temporarily named A, B, C, D, and so on. So the first one there, A, is what we would potentially call business, right? Then we have a health science meta major or field of interest.
Field of interest.
Sorry, I totally did it.
And then field of interest, C, oh, I've got like crib notes for this. Sort of social and public service. Field of interest D is something like culture and society. Again, the names, right, will be coming as we work with marketing and other folks to identify names that are student-facing. And then art and, gosh, what is F?
Science, and that's mine, so I know that. Science, engineering, and math. And then we have, I don't remember G though.
Oh, okay, G.
Manufacturing, construction, and transportation.
Right, so temporary names, right? Then we have IT, and then we have education in I. This is our team. We felt it really important to recognize them. You'll notice that it was a cross-functional, cross-college team with faculty as well as other staff inputting into this whole process. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we pause and really congratulate them for the work and their leadership? Then how does this all connect to industry partnerships and the connections to industry? They talked about the field of interest being the cornerstone of what we do in Guided Pathways, and those connections to industry then come next. It's been a pleasure working with those teams. There are two areas and design principles that were identified. There were several identified, but two that we're working on and I'm trying to give an update about today, which are identify one set or field of interest for the district. You just heard about that, and they'll be named in a very few short weeks. And crosswalk those fields of interest with the institutes. So these are the two design principles. The industry partnerships area identified working with our economic developers, with our government officials, our partners, what are the growing fields and the fastest growing fields? And you've seen this list before of the institutes and which ones had been identified from Maricopa. The first three, we've launched teams and have teams working on. The next three, those teams are launching right now to begin their work over the summer. Let me just crosswalk one as an example for you, as we're quickly running out of time. If the field of interest, example G, is named manufacturing, construction, and transportation, you can see that field of interest G at the top. Two institutes are currently being developed, one in manufacturing and one in construction, and the corresponding areas for pathway mapping are listed below for those two. Those have been identified by those teams and those institute teams, as well as working with the pathway mapping team to really focus on the CTE areas and focus on what programs will be within each institute. I look forward to coming back very soon and giving you further updates about institutes and more specific, as well as other areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from any of the board members or comments on that? Any questions or comments on that one? No, thank you. As we said last month, thank you for the good presentation and the good work. We will continue to update the board every month. And the second part of the transformation is the progress that we have made with the advising model. And Meredith Warner will make the presentation.
I am so glad you had them go first because it makes this really sink in. So I hope that you take what you just heard from the first team under transformation and you really sort of tie it into what I'm about to explain. So first, thank you, President Hendricks, Governing Board, Dr. Harper-Marinick, CEC, and guests. I want to share with you, oh, it's not even up, see that? I thought it would be. So I want to share with you about the advising transformation that's currently happening in the district. So I know it's no big secret that we need more advising in our district in general. I know you have touted it as a governing board. I know we've heard it from Dr. Harper-Marinick. all the time. Our presidents are constantly telling us more advising is necessary. It's what's happening across the country. We know our ratios are bad. And so at this point, we know we have 32 new advisor analyst positions that we're bringing to the district. So to explain very briefly the first 5 slides, and then I'm going to give you a little bit more in depth in the last slide. The first is that these particular analyst positions, the job description was developed, as you can see, and finalized April 6th. This was approved and finalized through a number of channels, but mostly through DAC, which I know the prior group explained to you as our Directors of Advising Council. Dr. Julie Bowler and Michael Cornelius are Directors of Advising in the district, both at Scottsdale and at Phoenix College, and they started to review screening the applications that came in April 23rd, which you know was just last week. And believe it or not, the two of them and a committee of cross-district-wide representation from advising areas interviewed the first round on Monday of this week. So that's huge progress for us. There were 137 applicants within the very first internal applicant pool. So internal applications are due by the end of this week for anybody else interested in these 32 positions, and then it will be open as an external pool. You can see they're going to continue this first round for the next 4 weeks, and then there will be second round interviews, and after that there will be job offers. And our whole goal at the very top of the slide is for those new analyst positions to start July 2nd. Now, what does that look like for us? There's a distribution, right? 32 advisors. Somehow all of our colleges have to have some sort of distribution to level the playing field. And those 2 slides after this, you're going to see why that leveling was necessary. So at Mesa, there will be 5 advisors, Glendale, Paradise Valley, Phoenix, Scottsdale, 4. You can see the breakdown. It was very important to us that every single college got at least 1 analyst. This was to bring continuity to what we were doing in the advising process. If 2 of our colleges who didn't necessarily need one to level the playing field the way the others didn't get one, then our new model wasn't going to work across the entire district. So you see here in the slide, this is what we are currently facing in terms of student to advisor ratio. This is a very important slide. Some of our colleges have 2,000 to 3,000 to 1 student per advisor ratio. That is absolutely unmanageable. It's not manageable for our students. We will never get through our pathway mapping. We won't be able to help our students navigate the process if that's where we currently are. 32 is going to make some change. But what we know across our colleges is that we need more advising. And so we're going to be challenged as a district with these 32 advisors to come up with other ways we're also going to be doing advising within our colleges. However, you can see here, for most of our colleges, that brings us down to, about 1,000 to 1,100 to 1. Not great, but we're getting there. So this is the slide that's most important. So as you see here, our launch for the development of these advisors is May 16th. So it's coming up. We're hiring the advisors and we're developing the process for these new analyst positions as we go. We have an entire task force built, VPs, deans, advising, collaboration with faculty, counseling, a variety of academic departments, and administrative services as well, to help us build this new case management model. How are we going to do it? That's yet to be seen, so stay tuned for more updates on that. But we're going to use industry standards. We're really going to be looking to make sure that we can see a student from the moment they walk in, identify those fields of interest you just heard about, help them navigate the process. I don't know about you, I probably changed my major 5 times while I was in college. However, I never left the field of communication. I had loads of options within it, and I stayed there. But I did go from being a radio DJ to being somebody in PR. So, slight difference. You can see on the right-hand side of the slide, these are our milestones. These are our opportunities. We're hiring those 32 new advisors. We're going to be working with our current advisors. The goal is to elevate the work that we're doing. If you go to any of our colleges, you will see transactional advising. You'll see a queue. You'll see somebody meets with a student. They hope they see them again one day, but after 20 minutes, they never know. And the next thing you know, the student falls out, drops out, doesn't continue. Our goal is to meet them where they are and to help them navigate our process. We can only do that with the work of the team that you just saw behind me before, and that's going to help us elevate the work that we're already doing. So our goal is to bring our current advisors up to that level as well. So we have analysts, we have student services specialists doing work, and our hope is that over time we will elevate all of them. You're going to see that we're building a brand new case management model, but I look to all of you to consider what that means for us as a district financially as well, because we are going to be doing more advising at our colleges. We acknowledge the fact that that does not necessarily mean we will have more and more advisors, but there will be creative efforts for us to have more advising. And you'll also notice, of course, LaCoya is in here, so I want to make sure we mention that there will be a performance and evaluation process to make sure that we are elevating that. But you have to give us time and have patience with us. We're building it. The good news is those 32 are coming, and they'll be here within the next 6 weeks. Thank you. Oh, do you have questions?
Thank you. Any questions?
Just one quick one, and I may be getting ahead, so you can stop
okay.
me. Are you looking at partnering? You know, first time you see somebody, I call it triage. You got to find out where they're at, how they got there, and where they want to go. We provide education, but a lot of those students have way more than education needs that they have to conform to. Do you have a plan to work with our nonprofit families that can provide those other services in their lives that can get them ready for education in that case?
So part of this model under case management and the design of the new analyst positions is to be able to diagnose, right? To be able to look at a student and understand that a student is taking the wrong path or isn't making it to their path or hasn't gone to class in 3 weeks, and what are those kinds of interventions. These new analysts will be able to partner with our counseling department, to partner with all of these various services that are within the community. That's already being developed. Any of our counseling departments, by the way, have that. It's about getting the students to that entity so that they know those resources are available to them. But if you don't have a point person, you don't get there. And so our whole goal is to make sure students identify with someone on campus who is their partner in this educational journey.
Any other questions? Thank you. That concludes all the presentations. Thank you, Mr. Hendricks.
Thank you, Chancellor. It's exciting to hear people speak with enthusiasm and excitement about the job they're doing. They obviously like what they're doing. They're taking us forward. They're taking us to new places we haven't been. And just exciting to see the enthusiasm and what they're bringing to their jobs. It's great to hear the happiness and excitement they're bringing. We've got a few people that arrived after we had Citizens Interim. I moved the Citizens Interim up because we had a few people that wanted to speak and they had other obligations. As a result of my moving it up, we have some people that arrived a little later in the meeting and they intended to speak in the Citizens Interim, but because I moved it up, they didn't arrive till after the Citizens Interim. So I'm going to open the Citizens Interim back up. They weren't able to sign in, so I need to get some idea how many people are there that arrived late that wanted to speak. Is there one or two that wanted to speak on the behalf of the group, or what are we talking about here? 2 people. Okay. 3, okay. I don't have names to recognize you to call you, but I'll just say if the first one would like to come up, or if you have names, I'll be happy to recognize you. Rodrigo Dorador.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, Chancellor, members of the board, and public at large. My name is Rodrigo Dorador, and I am here as a board member for Scholarships AZ and as a student of Phoenix College. Scholarships AZ is a nonprofit that supports all students achieve higher education regardless of their immigration status. And we are here to thank you for the support of undocumented youth. In my personal case, this institution has been a launching path for my career. I applied for graduate school and I was accepted and I got a full ride, but I had to meet one requirement, and as an undocumented person, it would have been really inaccessible for for me to get that one last requirement to go to graduate school. But because of your efforts and the policies that you utilized, I was able to take the Calculus 3 class and meet the requirements for my graduate studies. So in the fall, I'm going to be starting as a student in the program of Masters of Public Affairs at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Thank you so much. Now, I tend to be the exception, and I'm really thankful, and I am also really saddened with the recent Arizona Supreme Court case, and we know that the Arizona Board of Regents has created a 150% in-state tuition policy for DACA individuals, and we ask the board to consider alternatives for resident tuition similar to ABOR. Thank you so much.
Mrs. Haber wants to comment. We better be careful we don't comment on this topic. It's not on the agenda, and we can't violate open meeting laws. But if you, okay, okay.
Congratulations.
Ezekiel Santos.
Hi, President, and hi, board members, and presidents of the colleges, and chancellor as well. My name is Ezekiel Santos, and I am a student at Mesa Community College. I am also president of a new club at MCC. It's called MUST, and it's Mesa Undocumented Students Thriving. And it's a club to be able to bring awareness and the conversation at MCC, and be able to get in contact with other students that may not know that I was an undocumented student sitting next to me. And it's been an experience because I'm not the qualities of being a president, they're not the greatest. But with people that I've met, friends have helped me. And one of the biggest moments that has helped be able to do the things that I've been doing with this club and my team was earlier this year in February 16th. The chancellor gave a talk on radical change and how we can do that and how we can set that up in our colleges. And I was fortunate to attend this meeting, and I took a lot of notes down, and I was like, I remember taking all these. And I actually was able to implicate them a couple of weeks after at a DACA panel where we brought up the conversation. We invited students that were taking classes that were similar to, that would have this kind of conversation. And it helped me out and there's these 3 stages, the technical solution, system and norms, and then transformational leadership. And so these 3 steps broke it down for me to be able to break down the conversation and know how I can reach out to other students. During this conference, there was panelists, and one question really really got to me because, the question was, what scares you the most? And the panelist answered, one of them answered, what scares me most is not being able to reach out to you and touch you and be able to connect with you. And as a DACA student, someone who's undocumented, that's the thing that scares me the most. Not being able to reach to you and be able to get across this, just being another human being and being able to do that. And I'm here to say thank you for what you've done in the past with in-state tuition. I greatly appreciate it. I've been able to go to MCC for the last 3 semesters. Unfortunately, I may not be able to continue that because of the in-state tuition, and hopefully I get scholarships and be able to get back. But I just, again, wanted to say thank you, and that's all.
Thank you. Was there a third person? I'm sorry, I don't have your name, but if you could state your name at the microphone, that'd be fine.
Yes, hello, my name is Karina Ruiz. Thank you, President, Chancellor, board members at large, and public in general. I am a DACA recipient, a mother of 3 children, 3 U.S. born citizen children. And I came from Mexico at the age of 15. Started high school a semester late, giving my all so that I could graduate on time. I didn't know how the college system worked, but I hustled and I asked questions, and I was admitted to Arizona State University in 2003. There were some classes that because they were cheaper at the community college, and I was able to transfer, help me through my schooling at my college. Unfortunately, because of Proposition 300, I had to leave school a semester short from graduating. That was something very hard on me because it was the dream of my parents. It was the reason why they brought me here, because they wanted me to have a better an education, more opportunity. Any parent, and as a mother, I would do that for my children. I would cross any desert. I would do whatever it takes for my children to have a better future. And fortunately enough, I was able to find in the Arizona Dream Act Coalition, where I'm an executive director today, a support group. They were able to help me, and with DACA, I was able to find a job. I went back, and we were not able to get in-state tuition in the universities, even with DACA. I took a class a semester. I finally graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry on May of 2015. It took 12 years for that dream to become a reality. And this is why I do the work that I do today. I decided to put my career on hold because the work that I do impacts so many students and so many people's lives. This is important for us to continue fighting. I want to thank you for the decisions that you have made in the past. It has helped so many students, 2,000 students, to have that light of hope. And we will continue to fight for every student that graduates from Arizona high schools to be able to have a chance of attaining higher education. We want you to join us in that fight, whatever that looks like. Please invite students to your meetings so that you hear from them and know from our struggles. It is very hard to make decisions without knowing what the issue is, without walking on those people's shoes. So please, I ask you to invite us. Right now, I know that there is a need for financial help. We have students that we're planning to attend in the summer and also in the fall, and they won't be able to because they don't have the resources to. So please, I ask you to really consider that and do it expedite, because we don't want those students to lose hope and to drop out of school and think that they don't have a future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Was there anyone else that wanted to make comments at Citizens Interim? Okay, we will move on to the consideration of the consent agenda. All items with an asterisk are consent matters unless they're removed from the consent agenda at this time. Any item may be removed from the agenda by the Chancellor as a matter of administrative prerogative or by the governing board upon motion duly made, seconded, and approved. Consent agenda items will be approved by one motion, and there will be no specific discussion of these items. Items removed from the consent agenda will be approved or discussed during the consideration of the non-consent agenda items. Does anyone wish to remove anything from the consent agenda? Seeing none, if I can get a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda.
I move for approval of the consent agenda.
I second it.
Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed by saying nay. Consent agenda is approved and passed by unanimous vote. Non-consent items. Item 12.1, business services, approve items to be included in the fiscal year 2018-19 proposed budget. Do we have questions or comments? Dr. Thor.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. This question is either for Mr. Hibbs or Ms. Shelton. On the employee compensation, regarding the lump sum of $750, it indicates it's to all regular faculty and staff scheduled on, blah, 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 to 12-month schedule who work 30 hours or more per week, and all short-term OYO, OSO faculty and staff who've been with the district for all of 2018. Please clarify for me, does this include specially funded employees?
Dr. Thorne, members of the board, yes, it does.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, if we can get a motion and a second for item 12.1.
So move.
Second.
Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed by saying nay. Item 12.1, proposed budget, passes unanimous by a vote of 7-0. Information items. Item 13.1, are there questions or comments? Mr. Bartning, did you have a question or comment? I'm sorry, I saw you reach for your microphone.
I was just turning it off.
Okay, seeing none, we will move on. Maybe to speed this up, if questions or comments on anything in item 14 or 15. Seeing none, we will move to item 16, monitoring reports, review budget analysis report. Questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move to faculty reports. Mr. Mitchell.
Good evening. President Hendricks, members of the governing board, chancellor, CEC, and guests. Tonight marks the last Faculty Executive Council report I will be presenting as Maricopa Community College's Faculty Association President. Effective May 8th, John Champel, here, Biosciences faculty member at Phoenix College, will assume the duties of FA President and, with them, the opportunities to speak to you in this venue. Thus, a final report, something akin to a status of faculty district relations, seems most apropos tonight. Here is where we are at as my tenure comes to a close. 1, the Faculty Association, on behalf of all faculty, have named members of this governing board and the chancellor as plaintiffs in a notice of claim, the precursor to a lawsuit over allegations of breach of contract and constitutional rights violations stemming from your actions February 27th. 2, the faculty have alerted the American Association of University Professors to the status of shared governance in the Maricopa County Community College District. President Hendricks, you are in receipt of a letter from the American Association of University Professors pointing out, among other things, that the actions of February 27 appear to be severely at odds with widely accepted principles of academic governance, close quote. 3, the work of transformation continues. In regards to this, I can anecdotally report that faculty responses to the dramatic changes proposed by transformation are still significantly divergent. The level of consensus among the faculty that one might hope would exist at this stage in the process seems yet to be achieved. 4, coincident with all this, the faculty at Glendale, Mesa, Chandler Gilbert, and Phoenix colleges welcome new college presidents. And next year, the faculty at Scottsdale will be searching for a new president. I wish I could welcome these new presidents into a less contentious, more stable district, but unfortunately I cannot. When I began this year, nothing of where we are now was part of the vision I had for where we would be today. Rather than any sense of accomplishment, I end my year as president with a desperate hope that we can speedily overcome these things together, that the needless conflict which has marked the last months does not stain the months and years to come, and that our students find, despite the recent tumult, continued success with us. Finally, allow me a moment to thank those who, unseen, have always stood with me here in this podium when I have spoken before you. The faculty and staff, the members of the Faculty Executive Council, and the officers of the Maricopa Community College's Faculty Association have always been the source of my inspiration, my strength, and my reason to be here, and I want to thank them all. Thank you.
Ms. Patricia Haas.
You're all very curious, aren't you? President Hendricks, members of the board, Dr. Harper Marinick, members of the CEC, and guests, I'm Patricia Gale Haas, president of the Adjunct Faculty Association. On April 12th, the Outstanding Adjunct Award ceremony was held at Rio Salado. Many thanks to the several governing board members who were in attendance and the college leaders that came to share and celebrate with us. A big thanks to Dr. Fisher, who came to present our awards. The Adjunct Faculty Association representatives and committees choose the finalists from each college, and this year there were over 250 nominees. We had to narrow that down to 30. This event probably highlights more than any other how adjuncts support the broad mission of the community college. Among the winners for this award were a nuclear engineer who teaches math, and an anthropology teacher who does research and supports women with breast cancer in Ghana. So the variety was just astounding in the adjuncts that were awarded. Maricopa Center for Learning and Instruction funded this program, and we would especially like to thank Yana Reslin and Polly Miller for the support and the extra work that they put into the event. We would especially like to thank the students of Estrella Mountain's Steam Engine Makerspace and their fearless leader, David Weaver. While the students are learning technologies to create important projects like prosthetics, they took time to create a completely unique award. So this is our trophies. The trophies taken home this year are truly one of a kind and demonstrate several different skill sets. The yellow dodecahedron was created with 3D printing. The block Maricopa M was also 3D printing, and the laser etching of the school logos are around the base. And then they also etched the names of each winner on the statue. So the bases were cut using a CNC router and were sanded and painted several times. The final assembly includes a vinyl logo for the makerspace. David estimates that it took 10 hours of learning experience were dedicated to each trophy. Having trouble with my language today. So I have 3 of these I would like to present to our chancellor and the provost and the board. And I hope they decorate the office. I don't think they'll ever do this one again. Pretty special. The dodecahedron was an idea. The dodecahedron has 12 sides, so we have 10 colleges, 1 Maricopa district, and a base. So that's where the dodecahedron comes from. We are formally announcing some very exciting news this evening. Lisa Cassard, senior HR at the district, took an interest in adjunct issues and researched the feasibility of funding self-funded insurance products for adjuncts at group rates. It turns out that alternative supplemental programs have been created nationally in response to the increasing number of part-time workers across the country. Ted Habler, the AFA representative over at Glendale, worked with both Lisa and Jeff Kirk of Holmes Murphy Insurance to put packages together. So this means that by the fall, we'll be able to offer some insurance packages for adjuncts, hospital, supplemental insurance, dental, vision, about 10 different products. So we're really excited about this, and we're so grateful that Lisa put that together. It was a lot of work. And so we're excited. This is our formal announcement, and we'll be telling the adjuncts. It's not major medical, but adjuncts who take advantage will have the benefit of price negotiations by very large healthcare companies. And we need to make it very clear that this will be a function of the Adjunct Faculty Association. All self-funded by adjuncts, and Maricopa will have no legal responsibility in this program. The program will be available, complete with marketing and website, by the fall, and the enlistment will start or be in place October 1. So thank you all for your support of adjuncts.
Thank you. We'll move to governing board reports. Mr. Saar.
Last week I had an opportunity to meet with the automotive faculty for all three of our programs across the district and learned a great deal about where they're at today with the automobile industry. It's changing dramatically. We had an opportunity to meet with the Automotive Dealers Association representative who talked about the future, which blessed my heart because he talked a lot about the driverless vehicle future and the fact that ownership of vehicles is going to be a thing of the past. For all your Corvette owners out there, you can still drive your Corvette, it's just going to cost you a fortune to buy insurance. But our programs are first class. We had an opportunity also last Friday to participate or to watch the automotive high school students compete at our Gateway campus. And the 9 schools that participated really blow you away when you watch what these high school kids are capable of doing with vehicles today that are so much different than those that I grew up with. EVIT team is the one that won the competition, so we congratulate them. Also, I want to let you know I attended the AADGB meeting. It was the last time we'll have a meeting called AADGB because the name has been changed to AACCT, which stands for Arizona Association of Community College Trustees, which is more in line with our national organization. There'll be other things coming up. They're establishing their goals for the year, and we'll bring that to you in the summer when there's more time. Thank you.
Mr. Barton.
Thank you, President Hendricks. I was able to attend my first Artist of Promise at the Herberger Theater last week, and I was blown away by the artistic talents of the community college students, and it was an honor to get to see that and again see some of the great programs and to see so many of the administration and community college presidents and chancellor there in support. And thank you, Dr. Lara, for a great tour of Estrella Mountain Community College and the steam engine, and getting to see the 3D printing firsthand and some of the technology in place. So thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Thor.
Thank you, President Hendricks. We are, of course, deep into ceremonial season, and that will continue on for the next couple weeks. I was able to attend a number of events along with other members of the board. Starting right after our last meeting, the Heroes of Education event, which now seems like that was months ago. And it was certainly a privilege to be part of the hundreds of people honoring Carolyn Warner. I also attended Gateway Community College's Runway for Success event. This is the second year that I have gone, and I continue to view it as a remarkable event in which the students walk the runway in the dress of their future careers while their stories are being told. And I know it was a successful fundraiser for the college this year. I also was pleased to attend the graduation of the Women's Mentor program, which is probably about 20 years old. So literally hundreds of Maricopa women have benefited from that program. I also attended the 30th anniversary gala for Paradise Valley Community College. And that was a lovely event that I think was also a successful fundraiser for them. Finally, on Friday, I attended the memorial services for Mrs. Linda B. Rosenthal, who served on our governing board for 29 years. Mrs. Rosenthal has the distinction of being the longest-serving governing board member in Maricopa history. She was passionate about our colleges, cared greatly for our faculty and staff, and was particularly proud of our students. And she has left an incredible legacy. And Mr. President, I would request that the board adjourn in her memory.
Thank you. Ms. Livingston.
No report. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Haber.
I'd like to make a couple comments. I think it is. Can anyone hear me? Okay. I would like to agree with Professor Mike Mitchell that it is very unfortunate that we've reached a problem situation. And I personally have tried to explain it, and it was because I was asked by an Arizona Republic columnist to please give the other side to the situation in which we voted to end, meet, and confer. And contrary to what some people wrote in response to what I wrote, I did study the issue quite thoroughly. And I was quite amazed to see that in the earlier years, there were, for instance, frequent visitations of administrators into classrooms. In fact, it was quite encouraged, it was expected. And so there was, I feel, more accountability, which I feel is one of the reasons that it was necessary to end something that more or less limited any kind of accountability from professors. Now, I've taught in the classroom for a very long time in this country as well as in Germany and in Japan, and never was it not allowed for an administrator to come into my classroom at any time. And I found that important. I found it helpful. I often got suggestions. And this is something I've had trouble understanding. Why would there be a rule that administrators aren't allowed inside a classroom? I would bet that a great deal of our professors would not object at all. But evidently, it's a rule, and somebody must object that it was put in there. And so, anyway, I'm hoping that we can work together on this, that I've talked to people who've been around a long time and asked what their opinion was. And they said that what has happened with Meet and Confer is that we have been so slowed down in our progress, whereas other universities, for instance, Grand Canyon and ASU, and they've been able to move faster ahead of us. And we know that our enrollment isn't what it should be, in that it has progressed quite rapidly, for instance, at Grand Canyon University. And so I think we should try to take a positive view towards this. Nobody wants to cause any damage to any of the professors or to the colleges. We just feel it's time for us to upgrade, to come up with something that might solve the problems, such as declining enrollment, and put us into the 21st century.
Thank you. Ms. McGrath.
Thank you, President Hendricks. I too attended many of the wonderful events that Dr. Thor did, and one that I attended that she did not mention was the gala celebrating Dr. Terry Ruiz being installed as the president at Glendale Community College. It was wonderful. They even had balloons, which made me feel very young again. It was wonderful to have her installed as president there. I got a real shock when I read that a group of professors has put out vote of no confidence on our very capable Human Relations Director, Ms. LaKoya Shelton. She manages all of our employees. The number I'm not quite certain, I think it's around 10,000. I think that she must do an excellent job because our turnover rate here is about 1.9%. When I tell people about our low turnover rate, they cannot believe it. They say you must be paying about double the wages and have wonderful management that you do not get elsewhere, and I say that's absolutely true. LaKoya Shelton has done a wonderful job for us. It was determined about 4 or 5 years ago that we were not quite in the mainstream of management of our employees, and we hired a nationally known firm from heavens only knows where, maybe Ms. Shelton could tell me from where, that specializes in helping you straighten out your employees, your payroll, your grades of employees, various things. And we have been following their directives, and we have done an excellent job of it. Apparently, some people are not very happy about it. We have stages where you can move up in employment and others where you have to apply. Anyway, it's worked out very, very well. I don't know if people think that Ms. Shelton does her job entirely on her own. I'd like to remind you, she has bosses. She has the chancellor who directs her. She does not do anything that steps outside of what the chancellor has suggested that she do. She has the board overseeing her. And I am still stunned that a group of professors would put out a vote of no confidence on her for absolutely no reason whatsoever that I can see, because she does one of the best jobs of human relations in the state, and I'm very glad to have her here. Thank you, Ms. Shell.
Thank you, Ms. McGrath. I attended a number of events, but one that was particularly enjoyable was I went to the adjunct awards dinner that Ms. Haas spoke of, and what a great experience that was. There was probably, 25 tables set up for dinner. And I moved amongst the tables, not because I kept getting shunned, but because I wanted to meet more people. So I probably sat at maybe 12 tables. And I met a pretty good number of people. And it was really refreshing because the group in this room are happy with their jobs. And they're, as far as how they're paid, they're probably some of the lowest paid people we have, but they're happy with their jobs. They like what they're doing. They're enthusiastic. They care about the students. Everybody in that room had the chance to complain to me if they wanted to. And I kept moving around looking for what needs to be improved. What do you like? What do you not like? Nobody booed at me. Nobody complained. Nobody said I hate it here. Nobody said the board's incompetent and the chancellor can't do her job. I heard just good things. They like what they're doing. They're enthusiastic. They want to work more. They're excited about the direction we're going. It was just refreshing to hear a bunch of people that are so excited about what they're doing and wanting to move forward. It was exhilarating. I'd like to second Ms. McGrath's comments, and I'm not going to get into any kind of defense against this vote of these 10 union leaders against one of our administrators. I think you got to continue the source and the vested interest they have in creating more controversy for their limited minority interest. It's really, you'd have to look at the source of who signed the complaint or the vote of no confidence. It isn't even worth addressing it. I want to express my complete support for our chancellor, for our vice chancellor, LaKoya Shelton, for all of our administration, the great job they do. I'm really impressed with the way we've dealt with challenges as we've been dealing with our comp and class, as our payroll system, the elimination of meet and confer. These were all very difficult things to deal with and continue to be. Anyone who would think we weren't going to have any challenges making these kind of changes as we move forward and ahead of other institutions that haven't done this, problems are to be expected. And it's how we dealt with the problems and how we continue to try to minimize them as much as possible. She's done a fantastic job. This vote of no confidence it's just more political rhetoric. It's completely irrelevant. And I feel for her. She's trying to do her job, and she's putting up with this baloney. She's got to listen to us. She's trying to move forward and do exactly what the chancellor's instructing her to do and exactly what the board has instructed her to do. and she's being chastised because she's doing what she was told to do. I completely support her. I completely support our chancellor, all of our administrators, our presidents. We have a fantastic group of people here. The majority of them are just like our adjuncts at the adjunct dinner. They're fantastic people to work with. They're happy to be here. They want to be part of the team. They want to move forward. The few that want to complain, if they're not happy, I look at this voter no confidence. In my business, if my employees have no confidence in me and they don't like it, they go look for a job and they find a place they're happy. With that, I'm going to pass the gavel to Dr. Thor to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we adjourn this meeting in the memory of Mrs. Linda B. Rosenthal.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.